could see Geshe continuing with this for a long time, but we're going to be moving to the new text, which is the fifth Dalai Lama's Jampe Shalung, which is the sacred words of Manjushri. I'm going to put up more information, but just so that everyone knows, Geshe will be teaching from the intertwined commentary of the fifth Dalai Lama and the current, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So that's available from Wisdom Publications. Manoshi's done a great job kind of putting links for everybody where you can find those. And Wisdom was kind enough to grant us permission to sort of show the text on the screen as Geshe-la's going through it, but they did ask that we plug the text. So I'll plug the text and say that, you know, if it's within your means, it is going to be a very wise investment and something that's useful for you well beyond Geshe-la's commentary. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the events that we have coming up in May. So next Saturday, we're going to have a memorial Tara Puja for people that have passed away. So really, this was in part to honor our late director, Arunas, who many of you know, who passed away last year. It's going to be almost one day before the 1-year anniversary of his passing. Arunas, the late Arunas's wife, Sharon, wanted to organize this memorial in honor of him, but also she wanted to open it up to prayers for many people who have passed away. So the center's friend Patricia, her daughter Kyra, but also everybody else who maybe has lost people recently. And so it will be the 4 mandala Chidamani Tara Puja. Geshe will be in attendance for that. And then on the Sunday, we'll start this new text of the sacred words of Manjushri. We have on the, I believe it's 14th of May, Paula Chichester will give a talk on how to relate to the spiritual teacher. She's a very experienced Western teacher of Tibetan Buddhism. She spent over a decade in silent retreat. So she has a really kind of unique perspective. Unfortunately, because of her schedule, she could only do a weeknight, but it will be available to watch later on for folks who are in different time zones. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was that oh, okay. It hasn't been posted yet. Okay, that'll have to wait until next time. So I think I'm done the announcements for now, and we will see everybody in 1 or 2 minutes. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, get comfy, and we'll get started. You think I'd have figured out how not to do that by now. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see both Geshe and myself okay, and can you hear me speaking okay? All right. And hello to all Dharma friends from Geshe. Can you hear him okay? All right, awesome. If there's any problems with the sound as we go along, just you can either speak up or let Dave know, and we'll try to get it taken care of right away. So first of all, greetings to all the Dharma friends. Geshe hopes that all of your minds are happy, and also in particular that your study and practice are developing and evolving. And also, to think about these teachings as a reason not to have an unhappy mind or to have an unhappy mind less often, because so much of what is explained is really about how to bring forth that mental happiness. And so when we talk about these activities, generally we pay attention to these three doors of the body, the speech, and the mind, right? These are important. And then designated partly in dependence upon these three of body, speech, and mind, there is that we call the self, or this capital letter I, which is kind of an awareness that might be in the background, but that is present day and night. And so because we understand, right, the connection between these various components and the I or the self, we know that, for example, we want to exercise to keep ourselves in good physical health, right? But similarly also, right, we want to take care of the physical self that is associated with that I, but we also want to take care of the mind or the mental health that is associated with that I, right? This is important too. So the holy beings, right, they proposed many different methods through which we can take care of this. But one of these is the practice of mindfulness awareness, specifically mindfulness awareness of the body and mindfulness awareness of the mind. And when we're able to maintain this mindfulness, what we'll see, right, is that the mental state becomes much more even, happier. So also in a Dharma teaching, whether one is the speaker of the Dharma or the listener, if one comes to some knowledge from these teachings, let's suppose, but one is not able to maintain mindfulness, then the application of that knowledge is less possible. One runs into problems. So it is said that the door to the accumulation of faults or the accumulation of mistakes, one of those doors is lack of mindfulness. So if we are able to apply the antidote, right, to that, which is mindfulness awareness, this will help to lead to both the temporary and ultimate happiness. And so this, so the Bakya and the Jempa, these are two Tibetan terms that are very similarly mean mindfulness. You can think of heedfulness and mindfulness together. So what Geshe is saying is to develop this mindfulness awareness or heedfulness, there's two factors that need to be in place. Jempa, which is often translated as mindfulness, but is more like remembering, and Shejin, and Shejin, which is introspection. That's the best translation for that word, introspection.
다 텐디슈나 녀반주 고조지 관도야 다 젠도르 주거든 거야 되지 레라본도 주요하레스.
And actually, on the basis of cultivating this mindfulness in the sense of the Bakyo, the heedfulness, or the mindfulness awareness, this is one of the four doors to the accumulation of faults, is that lack of heedfulness or lack of mindfulness. So that's closed. But also with this mindfulness awareness, we can subdue the other doors to the faults as well.
다른 바 돈보 대지를 마시바시바시 가침보 다 시찬이라 다 보여면아 드네 오페도 준비요.
So first, okay, as a Dharma practitioner, the first step is to come to know or understand what we don't know, right? So developing our knowledge. But a close second to that is this mindfulness awareness so that we can apply that knowledge.
텐디치인데 다 텐디치는 여본도 와이네 다 대시 그저 어느 세계에 대 어느 델라템비 다 세계니바 바자 세노 벌써 준비요하레스.
And so we want to accumulate the causes of happiness, which we understand in terms of the lasting happiness. Those causes are really the positive mental qualities. And then on the basis of those positive, developing those positive mental qualities, gonda semgi yuntenatele nipakande.
세르세르드네 세계에 대 요르도야 어느 스타네 게이니바 세노.
Right. So on the basis of developing those positive mental qualities, the overall state of the mind improves. And also as we develop those positive mental qualities, we develop, right, a collection of merit, right, which increases our potential or our power.
드네 소지가 깔아 첨보지를 세노 덴비 머리 소만노 정도 세아테네 다 보이보이레스.
And then we can see, right, the truth of this advice of the Buddha, which is one who is endowed with great merit is able to accomplish their aims just as they wish or easily.
다치 코로 된다 디들 레라보치도 세노 덴비 머리 소만노 정도 생가로 소만 마첸델이요 샤와레요 보치 대반도 왔더니 강가야 보이레스.
So that piece of advice, one who is endowed with great merit. I saw some notifications coming up. Can everyone hear me okay still? Okay, good. Yeah. So one who is endowed with a great merit is able to accomplish their aims exactly as they wish. So that means, right, the aims of this lifetime, but also the aims from lifetime to lifetime in the future, and those spiritual aims.
오다 텐디지네 프게 깔아 대지 셀 프게 치 대지 셀요나 아고사라와 셀요나 다 나로 드리자 요진 루루지네 내가 제대하도록 제세야 바지 소와지 된다 요아레스.
So if we can keep this in mind, right, the idea of the accumulation of this positive potential and this development, when we come into gatherings, when we gather like this, then definitely we can come about to a good result.
손지에 세대한테 손지가 수 있는 그 느리자 로데한테 제세지 가려서는 손지를 계제셔 봐이나 로데요 다시 제대요 다시 사와이다. 근데 즈마치셔야 거기 봐이 나니 뉴게요 말이스.
So one of the things that so Geshe is just sharing with you that one of the things that you may notice about his teaching style is that he uses a lot of kung. So these are like citations, or kung literally means source, right? So that means citations or sources of valid scripture. And he's sharing that one of the reasons that he chooses to teach like this is because when the Buddha shares a teaching, it's done in a perfect way with only the aim of gonda jengi. Because when a Buddha speaks, right, a Buddha has already completed achieving their own welfare, right? They've finished all the spiritual practices that lead to that. So when a Buddha speaks the Dharma, they speak it only with the intention to contribute to the welfare of others, to benefit others. Therefore, those proclamations are reliable. Whereas other teachers, right, Geshe says not knowing the status of all the teachers, obviously, but other teachers, they may not yet have reached that state where their own welfare is secured. So when they are speaking the Dharma, seeking their own welfare might be mixed in with striving towards the welfare of others.
But
all of this, just kind of framing things, but also very important is as we engage in the study and practice of the teachings, we want to do this in a happy way, right? We want to proceed happily.
On
the basis of this human rebirth, this human body, brain, mind, and intelligence, I will definitely engage perfectly in these wholesome activities. And in order to be able to do this, we want to develop a mind state where the body and mind are both relaxed. So just like setting down a glass or a bottle of water where there might be some particles or sand mixed in, if we set it down and leave it still, all those particles will settle to the bottom. In the same way, let us settle the thoughts in our mind. So any kind of meaningless thoughts that are not beneficial, mental projections, and so forth, think that these are just like clouds that are obscuring the sun, but with a gentle breeze, they are cleared away. So the nature of the sun, of course, is that it has this aspect of warmth, but also this illuminating clarity, right? This clear quality to it. And so we can think, right, that quality of clarity, our mind, just like, a multifaceted diamond, or just like a very clear mirror. It can perfectly reflect any object to be comprehended. So what is blocking that potential, right? We can think that's what's blocking it is the afflictive minds and the corresponding unpleasant feelings and the corresponding mental projections. So part of the purpose of our practice is to create a little bit of activity, a little bit of positive wind that can clear those clouds of the afflictions, the obscuring thoughts, and so forth away from the sun, so that the mind's clarity and its potential can not only be revealed, but also be utilized. If we're able to tap into this potential of mind and then cultivate correct paths, then ignorance will have nowhere that it can arise, right? We'll be able to pacify that ignorance. And then step by step, as we cultivate, we will become happier and happier, and we will also develop the qualities necessary to also lead others, to guide others to greater happiness. So with a happy mind, with a joyful mind, think I'm going to use this human rebirth in the best way possible. And in order to be able to do this, I will first clearly visualize the objects of refuge before me. Just reminding Geshe that we have a couple of extra things today. He remembers. So a reminder unnecessary. So let us begin with the prayers at the beginning of the teachings. The praise to the Buddha. He's like, you can see that Ngodrup's discursive thoughts were going during the meditation. Yeah. Let me just check our sound settings for a moment. Sorry. So I've turned the sound for musicians on, but Dave, if we get fuzzier stuff as we start talking again, just let me know and I can adjust it back. Chondende Dejin Sheba Dachomba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Reba Dan Shabsu Demba Dewa Sheba Jiden Jemba Chebu Dewe Kalo Jorwa Lana Meba Radam Minamgi Demba Sanje Chondende Pejawa Shagya Tuba Loi Chazelo Chede Gyabsu Ji Tumba Chomdende Dejin Sheba Dachomba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Reba Dang Shabsu Demba Dewa Sheba Jiden Chemba Chebu Dewe Kalo Jorwa Lana Meba Ladam Minamgi Demba Sanje Chomdende Bejawa Shakya Tubala Chaselo Chede Gyabsu Chi. And the short mandala. Oh, sorry. Yes, the prayer to Guru Rinpoche. Thank you, Dave. Yes, yes. So the 7-line prayer. Yogi no chanza Yazen Shogi Ngedronye Pema Jone Jesu Ngodu Kanjo Mambu Gor Kyegi Jesu Dajogi Jenji Lapshir Jesus Guru Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om. Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Om. So we'll do the short mandala. Soji Böge Joshi Medoi Ramri Rablingji Mandala Gona Yadayami Sonje Jedon Sogi Chenam La Janju Bardo Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chenin Gibe Sunam Ji Jola Benjir Sanje Jubar Sho Jedon Sogi Chenam La Janju Bardo Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chenin Gibe Sunam Ji Jola Benjir Sanje Jubar Sho Chedan Sogi Chenam La Janju Bardo Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chenin Gibe Sunam Gi Jola Benjir Sanje Jubar Sho. Sorry, Dave, I'm seeing some sort of notification coming up. I'm wondering, maybe that just means we're streaming? Everything's going smoothly, right? Everything's good? Okay, all right, good. Lozogi.
Oh yeah, that's how we are going to take it.
So we need a good field within to plant these seeds of virtue, these positive imprints, right? And this begins with settling the body and the mind. So let's do that.
So
what we'll practice today is placing that mindfulness awareness on the breath, on its rising and falling. And this doesn't mean changing the way we're breathing. Actually, we need to let go of trying to control the breath. What we're really trying to do is breathe naturally, while at the same time having a mindfulness, having an awareness of the sensation of the rising and falling of the breath. What does that breath feel like? So whatever kind of sensation or feeling is arising, the mind is noting that, but the mind is not getting carried away by that thought. In other words, we're just observing here. And so that sensation, that thought, it arises like the wave on the ocean, but we don't hold on. We let it subside back into the surface of the ocean, just like a wave. Just think in this way my mind has become peaceful and I've been able to tap into its essentially neutral nature of equanimity. And within the equanimous ground of that mind, I'm going to plant a positive seed. That positive seed within the mind, it can be the realization of this potential that myself and others possess, which is the potential for liberation, the Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment, the mind of Bodhicitta. And understanding also from this that all sentient beings possess these potentials, possess these capacities. I will see that every single one of them should be cherished. They are all close to me. There's not a single one that's far away. And think, from actualizing my potential, from actualizing the Buddha nature, it is my responsibility to lead every last sentient being to the same state. Bring forth bodhicitta.
Yobochina tended to Togre, Jessica, Sawa Mario, but Hans Mario, but the Alliance of Jadetsaman, so much.
I can definitely actualize this Buddhahood and lead all sentient beings to that happiness. Why is this the case? Because the main obstruction to reaching enlightenment, the ignorance grasping at the self, is a completely mistaken mind. It is not grounded in truth whatsoever.
Shombato Nijitzawa Chivishonjuse, Tiro Batoni to be Shiranda, Narosu Yabochana Tsebachi Dawanoji, Ani Tsepani Dawa, Tai Archers General, Jonge Dawanoji Bata, Totoyagata Kokachambochi.
The bodhicitta rooted in the love and compassion, and along with this the mind of wisdom realizing emptiness, if we are able to exhort ourselves in developing these, we will be like the waxing moon, that from the new moon to the half moon increases and increases until it is full.
All this was, what that Jensono to the Lama Capicala, Noji Somba, Jedes on a Rode shot and Selecho maybe Noto Kangala, Leka Menicole, the agitated was.
If we become convinced of the fact that through working for the welfare of others, one's own welfare will be naturally achieved, right? These are the words of Lama Tsongkhapa. If we become truly convinced of that, what we'll find is so many of our kind of busy sort of thoughts, worries, unwholesome thoughts and things will just subside just based on that. If we can see others, right, not as adversaries, but we see their positive qualities, and we have this attitude of holding them close to us, right? So many of our kind of worries and aggravations will subside. We'll be much more relaxed. Yeah. So what really one who has those kind of relationships with others is taking care of one's own welfare in the best possible way.
Oh yeah, that
So we had a request from a couple of Dharma friends for the Lung, the oral transmission of the praise to Manjushri, glorious wisdom's excellent qualities. This is a very popular prayer to Manjushri. I think I sent the link for Lotsawa House to Dave, but if you put praise to Manjushri in Google, you will find us. And together with this is the Omarapatsa mantra of Manjushri, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama especially has said, like, his development of wisdom and his capacity to remember what he learned, many of those capacities were developed through the recitation of the Omarapatsa mantra. Yeah, so in the monastic institutions, right, where the monks and nuns are studying the teachings right from a young age, in the morning before they begin their memorization, they recite this Omarapatsa mantra, and then also in the evening when they are kind of reviewing, they also recite this Omarapatsa mantra. So we need wisdom, we need a memory, the capacity of memory to remember the teachings. We need to have introspection, we need to have mindfulness awareness. mindfulness. All of these things are important, and all of them are aided by the recitation of the mantra and this praise. So just, sorry, so Geshe will give the oral transmission now, and just listen with an attentive mind. It's quite short.
Lama Tongkembo Jitsin Jambion La Shanza Lo Kongi Lo Dini Tita Nyata Nanda Rasa Yue Jenye Deka Jiji Zichi Niji Duga Levo Kota Sibi Zera Mari Muto Dunga Chizu Yin Rosu Kala Pachi Taze Yala Jiji Yundes Juita Chedu Nyamuni Lo Leji Chwaju Chwanzeji Mari Mase Dunga Nyaka Jenye Jenye Jenze Raja No Mari Patsawa Yala Doji Papa Chiri
So this sword, right, means that not only is the sword cutting through ignorance, Manjushri's sword, but also the imprints, the latencies left behind by that ignorance. Yeah, so that is the power of wisdom. It can cut through that just like a sword.
Dene daji saji tase te lizu jasi tui ko chitwa chitu chini jeti dwale masen jo milyon la ndo omara bazana di omara bazana di omara bazana di omara bazana di tsede cheji chera geze chi dwale tumi mumba rasa ni kado te ju yule to ba loji pupi no wa za do so konse tawan de ba gum juzen tawan de na So in
this way, Geshe has concluded the oral transmission of the Kangloma, the praise to Manjushri, glorious wisdom's excellent qualities. Wangde. Yeah. So Geshe said today he gave the lung of this praise to Manjushri, and in the future he also fully has the intention to give a commentary to this short praise of Manjushri. So that will come as well. So let us now turn our attention to words of my perfect teacher. For those of you who have the Padmakara edition of the text, in terms of where we are, I believe that we are just before the last paragraph on page 16. Tis going alagi. Mare. Mempa kepa tabutseni dang dempe lame jidro son sorry. Lama tenkyang lame dire. Lama tenkyang lame.
Lama tejo lami kajo madana maybe goa manyana maybe never pendo ta mepadunra.
So just picking up slightly before where we left off. Following a teacher without doing what he says is like disobeying your doctor, which leaves them no chance of treating your illness. I just want to say in the text, the language is ambiguous. It doesn't say he or she. The translator here is, put he, but just to be aware, I'm going to say they. So it's disobeying them is leaving them no chance of treating your illness. Yeah, so hearing the teachings, but then not applying them with mindfulness and introspection, like we talked about earlier. This is essentially the same as going to see the doctor, but not following his or her advice or taking the medicine that they prescribe.
Oh yeah, that don't be chichi me rungi tute nyosa malona never shiki. Yes, me to me to me pa yecho rungi me matuna nela mapepa donda.
Not taking the medicine of the dharma, that is to say, not putting it into practice, is like having innumerable medications and prescriptions beside your bed, but never touching them. That will never cure your disease.
So
very clear here, having the medicine available, merely having the medicine is not enough, right? One has to take it as prescribed, otherwise there's no benefit. So the Buddha uses the example of the milk and water mixed together, which means that even if we have the knowledge of the teachings, right, if we don't mix it together with our mind, like milk mixed together with water, we can't get the full benefit.
Oh, the good one. That tayo I should cheat the coin near me, yes, near me. Akosara, or that digital, Levicta, catching bochi, dig for home, seti shulpachi.
So if we want to lead the mind, right, to that determination to really mix the teachings with the mind, one of the best ways to do that is to contemplate our current condition. So the faults of samsara, the danger of the lower realms and so forth. When we become convinced of the faults of samsara, the mind is naturally led towards the dharma. Once we develop a feeling for the teaching, sorry, I forgot one piece of what Geshe said. The milk and water mixed together means mix the mind and the teachings mixed together so that a feeling arises. Once we develop sort of a stable feeling for practice, a feeling for the teachings, then those contemplations on samsara and the lower realms are not as necessary. Yeah, and really one of the best kind of reasons to practice dharma is to look at the state of the world as it is now. When we see the problems in the world, the purpose of dharma becomes very clear. And so we talk about, the beings of the different realms, for example, the lands of unpleasant sounds and the continent Utarakuru to the north and so forth. So these are realms where kind of the way of life is actually quite enjoyable, quite blissful. But then when beings there come to the end of that life, then it's quite unpleasant. So because those realms have kind of a very blissful, happier way of life, it's very difficult for the beings within those realms to really become convinced of the faults of samsara or cyclic existence. And then because of this, right, they're just abiding happily, but they don't accomplish anything. And later they come to problems. And so also to understand that within samsara there are limitations, right? So we talk about the gods of the desire realm, and then higher than that, the form realm and the formless realm. And the top god of that, right, is the god that is at the peak of samsara, the peak of the formless realm. And actually that is, there's no way to go but down from there. You've reached the top of samsara and there's no way to go but down. So this is the nature of samsara. This has already been quite explained. But what we need to do is really develop a determination that we are going to get out, that we are going to be emancipated from samsara. These days, people say, full of optimism, Lama, look on me with compassion, thinking that even if they have done many terrible things, they will never have to endure consequences. They reckon that the teacher, in their compassion, will toss them up into the heavenly realms as if they were throwing a pebble. So if from our side we don't take things to heart and engage in practices like the accumulation of merit and the development of our positive mental qualities, but instead we spend most of our time in non-virtue, in unwholesome things, then thinking that the Lama or even the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are somehow going to be able to throw us up into a favorable situation, this is unrealistic, right? Yeah, so that this is a mistaken kind of idea about how the teacher or the Buddhas will help us. The teacher or the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, like they help us, the way that they help us is seen as like a hook which lifts us out, right? But it's our accumulation of virtuous karma and our striving in the development of the positive mental qualities that creates the ring where that hook can lift us up. If there's nowhere where that hook can hook onto to lead us up, there's nothing that can be done.
So go to give it a tissue of Mevache, and also
So the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, right, they have an unbiased wish and unbiased enlightened activity that is likened to the sun, right? It shines upon everywhere without an exception, right? But the caveat here is, if we don't open the curtains on our windows, the sunlight is never going to get in. Similarly, if the sun is rising in the east and we're standing in the southern portion of our dwelling, we are not going to be able to benefit from that sun. So it's a little bit like that. So when we speak about the Buddhas, right, it's this quality of unbiased compassion. When we talk about Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezi, right, his gaze is unblinking or unwinking, right, always looking out to be able to benefit beings.
Yeah.
So if we accumulate the merit, right, if we create the ring where that hook can go, then definitely we need to have no doubt that these enlightened beings will be able to bestow blessings to aid us.
Yeah, and
the fact that they're always there, right, it's illustrated by that story of the noble Asanga with Maitreya. He thought that Maitreya only appeared at the very end of his retreat, but actually it was just that he was obscured and could not see him. Maitreya was there the whole time. And also we can understand that the holy body, holy speech, and holy mind of a Buddha are in fact kind of as one essence. And this means that the Buddhas are kind of unobstructed, right? Like walls and things cannot stop them. So they can literally be there instantaneously. Yeah. So our mind, as ordinary beings, our mind may think of going somewhere, but there's walls, obstructions, and journeys to travel. So we can't be there in the same way instantaneously. So actually, those of you who are familiar a little bit with Tantra, you'll know that actually part of the purpose of Vajrayāna practice is to make the body, speech, and mind of one taste, is to bring the body, speech, and mind into one essence.
Oh yeah, this one. Lami tuji zi sewate, zi sewate, zi zu, sami donga te, polo ke mi she, jai kato tone, tabi lo temba tele labi tuji cheyo me.
But when we speak of the teacher holding us with their compassion, what this really means is that they have lovingly accepted us as disciples and that they give us profound instructions, open our eyes to what to do and what not to do, and show the way to liberation taught by the conqueror. What greater compassion could there be? It is up to us whether or not we take advantage of this compassion and actually pursue the path of liberation.
Tuji tela tembi tabi lo tondro mondo rongla roa leshi tele chong tari tanjo jimli to lodo jene shi rongla rongo yobi tin darasa dama tele tong tenye chi sonso yimbi lami chita gowa jar nyosa loni kondi chi chita cheba chi sheba kache.
Now that we have this free and well-endowed human birth, now that we know what we should do and should not do, our decision at this juncture, when we have the freedom to choose, marks the turning point which will determine our fate for better or for worse, far into the future. So as we look to that, it says that the importance of choosing between samsara and nirvana once and for all. So at this point, right, we want to bring forth a brave, courageous attitude to go forward in our practice, and also an attitude infused with joy.
So,
and also our part in this, our personal responsibility. As we know, the Buddha says, I have pointed to you the path to liberation, but it is you who must actualize, who must traverse it. And so there's like a paradox here, right? Although nominally we are still under the influence of karma and affliction, because we are still within samsara, at the same time, because of the favorable conditions within that, we have what we need to be able to arise the bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. We have what we need to be able to aspire to reaching Buddhahood, full enlightenment. Because this human rebirth has so many positive aspects to it, it is considered the ideal basis. In other words, we have the basis of everything that we need to be able to bring forth the altruistic mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, to be able to bring forth the wisdom realizing emptiness. The capacities are there. So, practically, we have everything we need to improve from day to day. We have everything we need to improve from week to week and month to month, but we might not necessarily see that happening. Part of the reason for that is that our determination to engage with the practice is shaky, inconsistent. So here the text is kind of exhorting us to actually kind of bolster ourselves and to become stronger and stronger in our cultivation. So, very aware that people have limitations of time. However, despite those limitations in time, to receive the benefits, a continuity in practice is extremely important, rather than doing a whole bunch and then doing nothing. The continuity is really important. So what one could do is, when one gets up in the morning, creating a few minutes of space for one's spiritual practice, and before one retires to bed in the evening, creating a few minutes of space for one's spiritual practice, and then, gradually increasing those times as possible or when possible. Yeah, and so also, when time is very scant, very rare, that doesn't mean that we do nothing, right? We can still take just a couple of minutes to develop our practice, and even, we don't have to think of a specific physical posture or a specific ritual, even just as we're getting up, right? Just as we're lying down and getting up, recollecting important themes. This is very useful. So just like the 6-session Guru Yoga is recited every 4 hours, this is interesting because it kind of coincides with a scientific observation that if a powerful, positive, or happy mind is brought forth, the benefits of that mind, right, with the brain, they last about 4 hours.
Oh yeah, this one. She Romis Shani, Yando Mandi Sato Tasachi, Jawatanda, she Sejen Duete, Lojo, Yasuka Kuzachi Hinamato, Tika Lechi, Lumachi Janite, GP, Monoki, Donis, Padi Turoke, Talaja, Shijishi, Sonji, Machapi, Seseto, Jojo Chingola, Teni, Tisato, Casa, Shadow, Reti Tonji, Sene, Jisha, Tum maybe Casa, Yando Mandi Sato Chataites.
So Geshe chuckling, I think, as this is quite a heavy portion of the text, but actually very important. It is crucial that we choose between samsara and nirvana once and for all and put the instructions of our teacher into practice. Those who conduct village ceremonies will have you believe that on your deathbed you can still go up and down as if you were steering a horse by the reins. But by that time, unless you have already mastered the path, the fierce wind of your past actions will be chasing after you, while in front a terrifying black darkness rushes towards you as you are driven helplessly down the long and perilous path of the intermediate state. The Lord of Death's countless minions will be pursuing you, crying, "Kill, kill, strike, strike." How could such a moment, when there is no place to run to and nowhere to hide, no refuge, no hope, when you're desperate and have no idea what to do, how could such a moment be the turning point at which you suddenly have control over whether you go up or down?
다 타마 맞게 타말레자 소나다 온 대시 자텐다 워초 데레자 양도만도 산서 데레시그니다 데디디 칼레 가보시라레 수도와스.
So if one hasn't previously engaged in spiritual practice, then at the time of death, if suddenly we're kind of frantically organizing pujas and rituals, right, without that previous impetus in place, it's difficult to say that that's really going to benefit, isn't it? But if over our lifetime, right, we engaged in spiritual practice and we put those positive potentials or seeds within our mind, then, right, those rituals at the end of life can be very efficacious. But without those positive potentials within us, hard to say that they'll be of benefit.
다 소소로 보게이레 세계에 야보 지여바이나 어느 쿠바제 보자바 노지 롱제 보자바 노지지마도 이네서는 다 강해지 테크요 말이스.
So what's here is quite heavy, right? It's talking about these terrible difficulties. On the other hand, if we are somebody who has in our life strived to as much as possible accumulate wholesome or virtuous karma, strive to as much as possible develop positive mental qualities, right? If we have really tried to do that, then we will actually be able to go in a very easy way, just like switching from one flat to another or going from one hotel room to another.
So
some of Dharma friends have said, kind of jokingly, but also there's some truth to it. If one is well prepared, then death becomes just kind of like going to sleep and waking up again, right? Just passing from one dream into the dream world and then out of the dream world into the next reality. So it's like that. Actually, if you understand the disillusions, then there is quite some similarity, because as we drift off to sleep, what's happening? Those kind of coarser minds that are very outward facing, these are slowly dissolving into the more subtle mind. And this coarser mind and so forth and elements dissolving into more subtle is also something that is occurring during the process of death. So let's be very clear. At that point of death, the I does not cease. That we call the mind does not cease, right? There's a continuity there. But what is left behind is that physical form that one possesses.
다 리라파 라파데 등가 저 칼라라 테니 쇼아이서 코멘도 그러마도 온보르 지오 다 뇽돈도 그래서 이네 쟤는 뇽도요 아레스
아 그래서 원보 카르당 냠들이
다 세도 뇽돌
셈당 냠돌 아레 로스로스
세르데 바파 탄도 야로.
And so it's this kind of physical body that we have from the food and so forth that we eat, that at the end point of this lifetime will have to be left behind. But even the sense consciousnesses, if we understand them as coarser consciousnesses that are dissolving into the subtle consciousness, we know that there's also a continuity to that, because in the next lifetime, when the subtle consciousness starts to branch out into the more coarse, right, one will again possess those sense faculties or sense powers. So if we don't do it in a stable way, then it can be as described here, right? But if we are being exposed to these things, right, about how to develop love, compassion, and that wisdom realizing emptiness, and we've kind of exerted ourselves in that a little bit, then we will have those positive imprints. Gonda jumpa dang ninja dang toni to besherab uzu jamna dene. So if we can keep those in mind, and if those can become potentials or latencies, the love, compassion, wisdom, realizing emptiness within the mind, then this is going to lead us in a good path and in a good direction in the subsequent lifetime. So it's the preparation we have in advance, right, which is the momentum that can lead us in a good direction, right? It's not good to have but you know, in a way many of us do, this habit of like just kind of when we come to the problem, then kind of panicking and thinking, okay, I'm going to do all these things to fix it, right? It's better to have the preparations in place beforehand. Yeah. So the great one from Odhyana, so this is Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, says, by the time empowerment is being given to the card marked with your name, it's too late. Your consciousness, already wandering in the intermediate state like a dazed dog, will find it very hard to even think of the higher realms. So just to clarify, I also want to clarify, especially because I thought people might not be familiar. There's like kind of rituals where you can do some sort of empowerment or some sort of blessing to a card with a dead person's name on it. So what Guru Rinpoche is saying here is that that's like really of only limited benefit. What we have to do is before the time of death comes, we have to practice well, and we have to receive empowerments with mindfulness. That's when it will be efficacious. In fact, the turning point, the only time that you can really direct yourself up or down as if steering a horse with the reins, is right now, while you are still alive. Oh, right. Yeah, so the reins are those two kind of leather strips that one's holding in the hand that are steering the horse, right? That's the analogy here. So while we're still alive, actually, we have the reins in our hands. So whether we are directing the horse that's carrying us to the lower realms or to the higher realms, right, we have some impetus over that. Similarly, whether we stay, we direct with the reins, we stay on the path within samsara, or we ascend to the path to liberation, we also do have some measure of impetus in that right now. Temba pochu mashichu mar mage lesa jo seche yenji dabale nipa chevi nesugati matayu jishe ngebi dari memba kepatavi lama donja me shaseche detsetavi tombi chi donja ikandar notabi ndashi ja te ronge tibi chi nyosalone tabe lo dandowa shigi. As a human being, your positive actions are more powerful than those of other kinds of being. This gives you, on the one hand, an opportunity here and now in this very life to cast rebirth aside once and for all. But your negative actions are more powerful too. Thus, you are also quite capable of making sure, on the other hand, that you will never get free from the depths of the lower realms. So now that you have met the teacher, the skillful doctor, the dharma, the elixir that conquers death, this is the moment to apply the four metaphors, so that's the metaphor of the doctor and so forth, putting the teachings you have heard into practice, and traveling the path of liberation. Yeah. Yeah. So as was mentioned, this is easy to understand, right? The basis of this human rebirth is powerful. It makes us very effective in our actions. So this means that when we engage in what is wholesome, that wholesome or virtuous karma is very powerful. But the same goes for when we engage in what is unwholesome. That is more powerful as well. So in this, right, a reason for feeling a little bit of confidence, a reason for feeling a little bit good about our situation is that the fact that we possess this human rebirth right now, this indicates to us very clearly that in previous lifetimes we've accumulated great wholesome karma, great virtue, because that's the cause of this type of rebirth. And also, when we look even to other humans of this world, we see the terrible suffering of being reborn in a war-torn country, of being reborn in an oppressed place where there is a continuous experience of suffering. So even amongst the human beings, our past positive deeds have put us in a good situation. Therefore, if we definitely have this determination to engage well in the work, there are plenty of opportunities to achieve something of value. So just remember those four metaphors of the teacher as the doctor, oneself as the patient, and so forth. This will greatly help us in our dharma practice. And to understand that when we speak about being a patient, the illness is this illness of karma and affliction. And the illness of karma and affliction will not be completely cured until we reach liberation. Therefore, strive to liberation from samsara.
Lama la layun de chila la chen de rola ngambin de ne de so lo wala ndago ni lawa seta chen de jani chi she de nyo se male shi la mi ka ti la ma chawa no ne chila de di be le so de ne so go ti do sha ba yin no.
The treasury of precious qualities describes four wrong notions that should be avoided, which are the opposite of the four metaphors we have mentioned. Shallow-tongued men with evil natures approach the teacher as if he were a musk deer. Having extracted the musk, the perfect dharma, full of joy, they sneer at the samaya. Such people behave as though their spiritual teacher were a musk deer, the dharma were the musk, and they themselves the hunters. An intense practice the way to kill the deer with an arrow or trap. They do not practice the teachings they have received and feel no gratitude toward the teacher. They use the dharma to accumulate evil actions which will drag them down like a millstone to unfortunate realms. So not really much to say here, quite clear. If when we are practicing the teachings, right, we are not doing this with a deep awareness, a contemplation of the faults of samsara, and we are not practicing the teachings sort of conjoined with a wish for liberation. In fact, we are doing this for worldly purposes. This is a little bit like cheating the teacher, and the dharma becomes a little bit like doing a business. So that will not come to a good result. And so Geshe said that, these days too, right, we can cheat the lama, but there are also many lamas who cheat the disciple. So especially in these times, that's really something we need to be careful, need to be aware of. So we come to the next section, midway down page 18 in the Padmakara edition, the 6 transcendent perfections. The Tantra of Thorough Comprehension of the Instructions on All Dharma Practices says, make excellent offerings such as flowers and cushions, put the place in order, and control your behavior. Do not harm any living being, have genuine faith in your teacher. Listen to their instructions without distraction and question them in order to dispel your doubts. These are the 6 transcendent perfections of a listener. A person listening to the teaching should practice the 6 transcendent perfections as follows. Yeah. Yes. So Geshe said that this is beautiful because this quote, right, the first line of this quote, offering flowers and cushions, this is explaining the first of the 6 paramitas or perfections, generosity, and then controlling behavior, this is speaking about ethics, sort of not harming any living being, and so forth, and having faith, this is patience, listening to the instructions without distraction, this is patience, and working to not harm any living being, and so forth, this is effort. And then listening without distraction can also be concentration, and then questioning him to dispel doubts. This is developing wisdom. So all of the 6 perfections are contained in the essence of this verse. Yeah, sorry. So if you weren't clear on which line was which, as we go down in the text, this will become more clear. Sorry, I think I went a little fast, but don't worry, it will become clear. So first, reading from the text, prepare the teacher's seat, arrange cushions upon it, offer a mandala, flowers, and other offerings. This is the practice of generosity. So the mandala, as we mentioned before, if done properly, mindfully, this is a supreme form of generosity. It is like the best type of offering it can make. Gonda ane penyon, jimpa chok yakshayana tane, mande sayadi.
Right.
And through offering the mandala, it also helps us to develop a courageous attitude and also to develop all of these sort of potentials, powers necessary for success in practice. Yeah. So as we offer the mandala, one awareness that's important to have is together with the mandala, I'm offering my body, speech, mind, all of my wealth and enjoyments, not only to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, but also to all sentient beings in order to benefit them. Then this becomes a supreme practice of generosity. Sweep clean the place or room after carefully settling the dust with water and refrain from all disrespectful conduct. This is the practice of discipline. So beautiful example, very clear here. Avoid harm to living beings, even insects bear heat and all their other difficulties while listening. This is the practice of patience.
까체도 차종 도치 알때 제바레서
Yeah.
그때 간지레서
Tene nganso tsunju jogoro, nganso tawa norwa denso pasha gores ana Japonien goresoro.
제바도로
Yeah.
라마도 칠라 로타포네 모타비 대비 쪼제더 년바 젠디
Lay aside any wrong views concerning the teacher and the teaching and listen joyfully with a genuine faith. This is the practice of diligence. Often we translate that as effort.
리송아 다 라메 동안에 세젠의 마이와 년바 소테
Listen to the Lama's instructions without distraction. This is the practice of concentration.
리송아 알타리나 치니레스레 소소는 군도와 어탄드게
Tene chua denso tanya.
태저 리송아 태조지 도셀라 소바 Ask
questions to clear up any hesitations and doubts. This is the practice of wisdom. So Geshe that's why we make room for question and answer at the end of every class, right? If you're already clear and don't need to ask a lot of questions, it shows that your wisdom is already like very refined, very clear and brilliant. But otherwise, we should ask questions.
Yes,
so this is the way to practice the 6 transcendent perfections while listening to the teaching. All forms of disrespectful behavior should be avoided. The Vinaya, so that's the text on discipline, says, do not teach those who have no respect, who cover their heads, although in good health, who carry canes, weapons, and parasols, or whose heads are swathed in turbans.
So there's
some restrictions on when the Dharma can be taught, right? The Buddha said that the Dharma cannot be preached if a request has not been made. And similarly, one could consider it unsuitable to preach the Dharma if people are not kind of behaving or manifesting in a respectful way. And so this can be with what people are wearing, if they wear hats and so forth, or sort of manifest disrespect in other ways, then one has to question whether that's suitable. And the Jatakas, take the lowest seat, cultivate the dignified bearing of thorough discipline. With your eyes brimming with joy, drink in the words like nectar and be completely concentrated. That is the way to listen to the teaching. And so actually it's kind of to manifest this attitude of respect. That's why you would have the custom, right, of the person who is teaching is sitting on like a raised seat, is sitting on a higher seat, right? It's to honor these customs here. So the higher Dharma seat, it really is to kind of bring forth a respect for the Dharma. It's not necessarily to kind of put that person in a higher position. It's showing respect for the Dharma or the teachings themselves. So Geshe is going to share a story about and he believes this story, not 100% sure, but he believes the story is about one of the Buddha's previous lifetimes as a bodhisattva. Not yet at the kind of final paths of a bodhisattva, but well within the bodhisattva sort of state. And so at the time, he was abiding in a country which had a terrible problem, and it seems like there was some sort of like a zombie type monster that was kidnapping children and eating them. It was like a kind of cannibal monster. So then one day, so Geshe said, yeah, this flesh-eating demon, it might have even appeared like in the form of a human being. But anyway, so one day that being who would become the Buddha later on, right, and he was still a child at that point, he encountered this demon as he was walking. And so the flesh-eating demon, right, he took the child and kind of set the child aside, and keeping him to eat for later. And then the child began to cry, began to weep. So he wasn't wailing, right? And he wasn't kind of having a tantrum or kind of freaking out, but there were just, the weeping was very silent, and there were just tears flowing from his eyes. So because the child wasn't freaking out and whatever, the demon began to reflect. Like he's not saying anything, he's not wailing, but there are these tears that he is weeping. So, why would he be manifesting like this? And he asked, he said, you seem calm other than the tears coming from your eyes. Is that because you fear that I am going to eat you? So Geshe said these stories come from the scriptures, so it's not a made-up story, right? These are, in a way, they're histories. And so the child actually responded, thinking that you're going to eat me and that I'll die. That's not the main reason I'm afraid, actually. That's not the reason. And then the demon asked, well, why are you crying then? He said, I'm crying because when I left to come to this place, I had promised my teacher that I would return, and he's waiting on me. He is counting on me for me to be able to return and to be able to help him. And if you eat me, I will not be able to fulfill my promise. And this is the reason I am weeping. And so the monster said, are you sure? Are you sure it's not just because you're afraid of dying that you're crying? Yeah. And so and the child said, really, that's not the reason I'm weeping. And if you doubt, send me away just so I can let my teacher know that I will not be returning and I will come back to you. I promise that I will come back. Yeah. So the demon was kind of impressed, right? And he said, this child is very different from the others that are like kind of terrified and freaking out. And so he was still curious if this was really true, if the child would come back. So he agreed. He sent the child away to go and meet his teacher. Yeah. So the child went, left the place of the demon, went to his teacher, explained that, tried to help him as he could, and explained that he had promised to return somewhere else, and he returned to the demon as he was promised. And of course, the demon was very surprised. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, at the time that child returned, some karma within this demon had shifted. And there was an opening, there was an opportunity for his mind to be subdued or tamed. Yeah. And so the demon was like so surprised. He kind of thought like, how did all of this come about? And he asked, why was it so important that you go and meet that teacher before you returned? What did you have to do? And he said, I had to go to that teacher out of respect, out of kindness, because he has given me that kind of matchless gift of the dharma. So he's given me the supreme kindness of the dharma. That is the reason. And then the demon said, well, what is this dharma? What does that mean, and what is it like? Can you explain something to me? Yeah. And then as he was explaining, the advice was very similar to what we're reading now in Words of My Perfect Teacher. That's why Geshe recollected the story at this point. So the child said to the demon, if I'm going to explain to you something about the Dharma, you have to be respectful. So you can't just be leering over me. I actually have to be sitting on a raised platform higher than you. And also, as I'm explaining things, you have to subdue your mind and listen to what I'm explaining. I can't be explaining the Dharma and the whole time you're thinking about how delicious I'm going to taste when you eat me. And the demon, because he was so curious to find out about what this Dharma was, he agreed to all of this so that he could hear. And then the child began to explain to him the faults of sinful activities, the faults of samsara generally, and the lower realms in particular. And the demon listened attentively. And actually, from hearing those words, he came to regret his actions, and he began to be able to transform his mind.
So Geshe
said, for 2 months, right, every Sunday, we've been discussing this text, the Kunzang Lame Shelung, the words of my perfect teacher. And this is a nice place to leave it, because we're ending on a positive note with this explanation of the 6 perfections and how to cultivate the path to liberation. So out of the many practices, many are important, but really some of the most important are these 6 paramitas or 6 perfections, which will truly be able to lead us along the path of dharma. So Geshe said, we'll leave Words of My Perfect Teacher here. So we are on page 19. The teaching itself, an explanation of how difficult it is to find the freedoms and advantages. That's where we'll pick up next time. So Geshe said, as you know, with this series on the fundamental text, we'll move to another text next week. But as we circle back to Words of My Perfect Teacher, in a few months we will begin right where we left off. So what we're going to be doing in the subsequent few Sundays is looking at the sort of important seminal text of the Stages of the Path literature, which is Atisha's Lamp of the Path, as well as a Lamrim text, Words of Manjushri, Sacred Words of Manjushri. So next week, Geshe is going to give the oral transmission of Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. In terms of lungs or oral transmissions that one receives, this one is of particular importance because many great lamas have said that if you receive this oral transmission of Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment, it is the same as receiving the oral transmissions of all of the Lamrim texts. So receiving this transmission of the Lamp of the Path is like receiving the essential teachings described in the entire path of Sutra, right? It's a very complete transmission to be able to receive. And Geshe is not just saying this in kind of a haphazard way. This is an advice that he has heard from many, many qualified teachers who explain like this. And so Geshe said, some people may ask, well, why are we shifting between texts and coming back? This is to be able to maintain interest, so that people are able to kind of cover things in a happy way, and also so that we're not going full on, but revisiting some of the same themes, so that people can remember things effectively. That's kind of the methodology that Geshe decided on. And so in terms of the Longevity Sutra of Amitayus, we know we didn't reach the very end of that, but there was the oral transmission, and also with the explanation. Really, there's a lot of repetition within that text, so all of the essential meanings have been explained. However, we will come back to where we left off in the Amitayus Sutra and explain the remainder kind of more fully, as we circle back to the text. So Geshe thinks that in terms of the remainder of the Amitayus Sutra, actually the Lamp of the Path by Atisha is quite a short text. So if we kind of finish that, then he could see us maybe picking up again with the Amitayus Sutra. So thank you very much, everybody. So with a happy mind, let us dedicate the merit. If after that you need to get on with your Sunday, please do. But if you'd like to stay for questions, you are most welcome. Tongni tawa rinpoche mache banam che jurchi che ban yamba me bayang gone gondo bewar sho jambe bao jidar kyamba tang kundu sambo deyan dejinde Deda kungi jesu dalo chir gewa dida tamshe rabdungo dusun shebe gewa tamshe gi ngawa gangla chodu ngaba de dagi gewe tsawa di kunkyo zambo cheji rabdungo wa Through the merits that we have accumulated, both ourselves and others, may, in particular, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, but all valid teachers of the path, may they be able to have stable, long lives, remain for us for a long time, and may all of their beneficial activities continue without obstruction. May their wishes be fulfilled. Through teaching the Buddha's doctrine, may the blessings of the Dharma and the sun of happiness shine on all beings without differentiation, without exception. So we'll pause there. Just let me adjust my volume, and then we can take questions from folks.
That didn't you much as Hawaii?
Yes, I guess that if you hold to like the stories, sometimes people like stories. So if you have a question, please ask.
Go ahead, Rudy. You have your hand up.
Yes, I was wondering exactly how limited are the benefits of putting the name of dead people on lists, like at fire pujas or something like that. How far does that go?
Nganso di Guru Rinpoche di nganso Ming Tia Mingchi dene pentok sheda mepa resine nanso nyechar jinsek nangola migi mingchi luswa dene pentok mepa di pentok mepa res kandes chik.
Mare da peto mepa do maro was. Da zo le che shu che bo yiza. Akosara da dig page che do lin da ba de ze peto re de. Zo le de.
So Geshe is just explaining that the quote, I believe it was from Guru Rinpoche here, is quite kind of strong to sort of motivate us. But what he would say is, generally, and also if we look at other teachings, the causes, the virtuous causes, the person who passed away, they have to have accumulated some sort of virtuous cause for those prayers and rituals to be of benefit. But if there are some positive potential or causes within their mind stream, they can definitely be beneficial. The way to think about it, about writing the name in the fire puja or making the dedication prayer for the person who died, we can think about it as like the water or the fertilizer that we're dedicating to the consciousness of that person that's going to help them bring forth what is positive within them and help their outcome, right? So especially when we are making those dedications, right, and the water and fertilizer will benefit those folks, those dedications, and there are many scriptures where this is said actually, those dedications are especially effective if they are family members, so if we share a blood or a kinship relationship with them, and also people with whom we share resources like food or finances. Because of the close karmic relation, it's also can be quite beneficial to do prayers of dedication for them.
But Guru
Rinpoche's words are very important here because, of course, the main thing, right? The main thing, all of these prayers and things, they can help, right? They're like extra things, but the main thing is our own virtue and our own positive things that we cultivate, right? Because that's the karma, that's the imprints. It depends on our own endeavor.
Ale,
lama Lama kandes jikten la.
Koro yato.
Yartang. Su chongyokti. Yartang. Ko dagjing la chi. Dene ko zamoling la chu. So Geshe also wants to sort of put this in perspective with, there are many other stories in the scriptures, for example, lives of great lamas who performed poa. So this is transferring the consciousness of someone who died to a Pure Land. There are many stories of great lamas not only performing the ritual, but leading the subtle consciousness physically of the person who died to a Pure Land, and then returning to the realm, to the place, to help their students. So there's also stories like that. But that's to say all of these things that it's not necessarily easy, right? These things can help, definitely, but there also need to be causes and conditions there. So those both need to be in place.
Yeah.
So to give an example, right? At the fire puja, right? When we put the names into the fire like that, right? Or when we sponsor a puja for somebody and put the names into the fire, especially if they're a close family member or a friend with whom we had a strong kinship bond, we're very connected. So the virtuous karma that we dedicate through our attention in the puja, through our acts of generosity and so forth, those absolutely can bring benefit, right? It's not going to be able to fix an entire problem, but for example, what might happen is if the person was reborn as a human in a place where there wasn't enough to eat or drink, through dedicating the merit in that way, perhaps they would be able to find a better way to sustain themselves, to have more to eat or drink. So it works like that. Su mi chongyok. Ko kande laosong.
아.
코 칸데라서 저수 칸데 하고서.
다 샤소 간에서 하고서 게 시고시 거나 게 바바지와. 계속될.
켄지델 팔라치케. 알레 코돔드랑 케치.
코 튀어서 와서 코로 두보지.
바르도기미.
알아 말아. 식시와서 만도사케지.
알레.
로스 담만 누지신 튀어내라.
알레 밀람다보지.
알아 말아 만누지.
미낭신 팔투시 알레.
튀어서.
So Geshe is remembering a story from his childhood. 켄지델 팔라트와. So he was remembering that a person in the village where Geshe is from had passed away. And so that person was in the bardo state, in the bardo being. Sorry. So Geshe said not sure if he was a bardo or some other spirit, but anyways, he was coming back in sort of a spirit form, and Khensu Delek's father was able to see him somehow. Even though that form was invisible to others, Khensu Delek's father was able to see him. And so he sort of asked, what do you want? And he said, wherever I am now, my feet are really sore and broken, and I need a pair of good shoes. So can you go to the house where I passed away and fetch me my shoes? So sometimes unusual things happen like that. Ale, kare lamgo gogidu as.
Kotsi dunanda bochin sileas was.
So Khensu Delek's father, he went to the man's house and he encountered some of his family members of the man who had passed away. And the person in charge of the house said, well, don't ask me to do that. Not only will the people not be happy that these good pair of shoes is gone, but also they'll not be really happy that I'm inviting ghosts or spirits or whatever to come around here. So, but Khensu Delek's father wasn't so willing to give up. So he made this offering called sur, which is an aroma offering to spirits and to beings in the bardo. So he made this sur offering, and together with that, he had another pair of shoes, and he imagined that along with the aroma, with the scents kind of ascending, the shoes were also ascending to wherever that person was. And later, he encountered that spirit of that person, of his friend, again, and he said, I got the shoes. Thank you very much. So that's another story. Geshe is not sure he said thank you very much. My apologies. He said, I got the shoes. Thank you. We kind of overuse thank you in Canada, I guess. Yeah. So actually, Geshe's heard of many such instances, actually, not just this one. So many people, so for example, the previous Trijang Rinpoche, he was connected with a man in Lhasa, I think maybe a benefactor, who had passed away. And in kind of like spirit form, he said that wherever he was at that moment, he wasn't able to get enough food. So could Trijang Rinpoche please help him? And then Trijang Rinpoche would always set aside a little bit of his food. And many people were able to see this kind of spirit being come and receive that food. So he came to Trijang Rinpoche because for 1 month he had hardly received any food at all, right? And he was really starving. So he came in that form to ask for help. So how he came, how the spirit form communicated with Trijang Rinpoche was actually sounds like an oracle. Like he entered the body of somebody that Trijang Rinpoche knew, and he expressed this wish, this need. And so that's how it occurred. And so through the oracle, they had thought that as the food was being presented, he couldn't benefit from the food just as if it was presented. So it had to be also made in conjunction with this sur offering, which is where you burn a little bit of things to make an aroma offering. And so when the smoke from that sur started to burn, this person was saying that, oh, okay, now I'm able to get the food.
me bagyo was.
Yeah.
Me no pa dumba shonro sa da wat.
Me dompa gi sobdra da bochagire tonda.
Me bagyo was.
Yeah.
Ki khalanda wat sono to yo was sa gan dis.
Ale.
Teacher kon me chisa da wat. Nga zo tana.
Ale. Loso, and so okay, I see. So as the person was still inhabiting the medium, right? It's like an oracle, so that the spirit of that person was still inhabiting the medium. When the offering was being made, right, it was like they were putting their face close to the fire. Normally the person would have been burned to receive that sustenance, but in this case they weren't.
Nga zo khala shimbo sa wa no ji ko pe kal sa ga dis. Kala ka karan
Yes. So it was like he was eating a delicious food.
Tani ko pe ta dis ta pe ki ya.
Yeah, and in that way, his needs were fulfilled. So this was something that was witnessed, not only by Trijang Rinpoche, but by many other people, Geshe said. And it's a story that's been told also by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, several times. Next question.
Go ahead, Sam, and then I'll ask a question from Facebook.
Hi, Sam.
So I have a question. I apologize if it's like not very intelligent question, but in the sadhanas, and this is very unrelated to the teaching today, but oftentimes in the sadhanas, like from a like the symbol hum in the generations phase, or like in Yamataka, it has like the iron, like the iron Vajra, and it represents the 9 brumis, but inside of that, there's another Vajra with all the colors, and then those colors. So my question is, oftentimes there's this radiation out of color or of rays, and then it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just curious, like, what that means, and like why that is so. Because all I know is it's like sending out blessings and then it's coming back, but it's so consistent. It seems like in the sadhanas, and I don't know what that means.
Okay. Sungshidi dang jawa yo mare sine druptap nang la perna yamantaka dabo jigje dabo yina dening anso hum yere. Rwa hum yik chikere. Yamina nganso di dorje kandisa gore tsegugi dorje dabo chikere di sel tagore srwa. Ane dorje yina hum yina dene özer chik par tro rwa. Dene özer di tsur tim. Dene kare shegire par tro semchen roba chegire dabo chikere sine tsur tim ya di kare chene dabo res. Par tro dang tsur tim gimsen kare du. Chetan. Karin sena di druptap karina di dabo chigere ro pa tro tim. So the radiating out and then the gathering back in, there's actually many profound meanings behind this. So there's many explanations given in the commentaries according to different deities, but Geshe will share one. So the radiating out is to benefit beings. The radiating in is actually to mimic the winds gathering at the central channel, which is one of the things that we need to do. Which is one of the things that we need to do to practice completion stage effectively. So visualizing like that, it creates like a cause similar to being able to gather those winds at the central channul. So it, like radiating out, benefiting beings, and then gathering in. So as we reach the completion stage, we're going to want to do those meditations where we try to gather and dissolve the winds at the central channel. But we won't be able to do that without ripening the causes for that by cultivating something similar. And so this absorption of the lights back into the seed syllable or back into the Vajra, this is said to be cultivating that very specific cause to, in the future, be able to gather the winds into the central channel.
But
to comment more would not necessarily be appropriate in this context, right? If you come to the Vajrayāna commentaries, Geshe will talk a lot more about this. But just to give a brief taster, we need to gather all of those winds into the central channel and dissolve them, because that is what is going to allow us access to the extremely subtle wind and mind, right? And that's very important in Vajrayāna practice. And that's also to help us be able to work with our subtle mind, to hold and to be able to realize emptiness. So it's all related to that. So we talk a lot in the teachings like this, which are on the Sutra side of the path, about emptiness, and we can come to a general understanding and maybe even a realization, but this is going to be happening with our coarser level of mind, right? It's only through the profound methods of Tantra that we will be able to access the most subtle levels of mind, and in that way realize emptiness in that profound way. Yeah. So that's one explanation. There's another one, which is by radiating out the lights and then gathering back in. We imagine that we are gathering back in all of the blessings to be able to be successful in our practice. Getting a lot of feedback. Okay. So that hum, whether it's a hum letter or whether it's a hri letter, right? Also understanding that that's not just a letter on a page, but that this hum letter or this hri letter is the essence of all the Buddhas. This is also really important in these meditations. But Geshe said that generally, like with these tantric questions, it's like you send to me an email, and we can come to that in the tantric commentary. We can't discuss too extensively in this forum.
I understand. Thank you so much. That was helpful.
You're welcome.
Hello. So we have a question from Katya on Facebook.
Yeah.
If one feels that a particular guru brings benefits for oneself, but this person has not always faith for this guru, let us think that this person has to decide if to take an initiation by that guru. Can the person think to take the initiation for his benefit, practicing Vajrasattva in the moments of unfaith, or this person shouldn't take the initiation for lack of faith?
Okay, I'm going to read this question back, Dave, and you tell me if I've understood correctly. So it's the so Katya is she's analyzing this guru or this teacher, and sees that there's a lot of instances where that person could be beneficial to them, but is maybe also perceiving faults, isn't able to have a stable faith. So that teacher, let's say, is offering an initiation. So is she better to sort of take the initiation anyway, and then those moments of lack of faith purify through Vajrasattva, or better to wait to take that initiation until the faith is more stable? Did I understand the essence of the question?
Yes, that's my reading it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, dene perna lama chikyona, dene lama gi yunten tongne, yapo chik yores, yene kadi yene yunten togmi yunten dinso tongmi tubia samsam kyun dapo chik sina, dene lama di wang nana, nanso kyun tets tompe kapula yunten mambu tongna wang shuna digiribes, matok jeng nanso pet yongten tongna kyun chikyang mi tongya bardu wang mashu ngela gude goresa.
Mar basi toyado ta yungar was lama yo ta tedo mares shi toyado yungar res akasara ta ina yo tene tenda e chana tene o ta te malon te yagar was
dinso kandis
tembo cheno yagar res shi toyado yungar res te ale ramatos
yine
ina
tensani
te chana
yeah
matengela ta ji boche
yeah
te chana tembo cheno yagar res
yeah. So Geshe said that once, even after the empowerment, like there will be faults that you perceive from time to time, but once you have relied upon them, so if you take the initiation, essentially you could say that you're deciding to rely upon them. Once you make that decision to rely upon them, ten sarne dine kyun datung tongire duai ne kare so.
Shi was shi tona ta shi to 다시 담아라 돈도 돈용 그래서 다들 가르쳐가 다들 투처럼 빈차지 오서 그 말이 다 된다.
Yeah, so you have to try to reduce those perceptions of faults, but it's not like after the initiation you'll never perceive a fault again, right? But you're trying to focus more on the qualities than the faults.
하고서
있어 보면 돼요.
시시뭐 도와용 그 말에서 대배도 할래비도 마토 받고 그 말에서.
Yeah, because Geshe is just saying that, like, to get to a point where you're not perceiving any faults at all, this might be very difficult. So if you're waiting for that to happen before you take the initiation, it could be a very long time. So just, you could take it and then try to not focus on the faults, right? To focus on the qualities.
하고서 어디 신기 다 저자 신람만도 요처럼 얘네들은 다 소소든 대화 요케이나 라만을 와셔나 주고 하래스.
라.
시 소소든 대화 요케이나.
Yeah.
뭘 아마 대전에 야보면 되는데 소소 야라는 라 주고 하래스.
And also, Geshe wants to be very clear that even taking somebody as a lama, if you see something that's done which is mistaken, right, as long as you do it with an attitude of respect and reverence, you can say to them, that I didn't understand this. I don't agree with you doing that. It's not like you completely lose your independence.
다 소소든 대화 몇 개이나 시에 동야들이 요때인데 이런 거를 왔어. 다 대지 소소가 다 야비쇼로 손오도네.
But if you're just kind of listening to like minor faults, especially that other people who maybe don't see this lama as a teacher are expressing, you don't want to remain so obsessed thinking about those. You want to try to focus more on his or her qualities. So Geshe said, like, seeing them in a totally negative way to the point that you're abandoning or denigrating, of course, this is something that we should definitely avoid. But seeing a little fault now and then, I mean, you're going to be like pretty high up there where you don't even perceive something tiny that's a fault. So when that happens, just try to focus more on the qualities. Yeah.
lama
te chawa ina yo
yeah
lami le ka tni chene ya pom mandiwa se ngazo pas la gan diwa te la bi ka senta lama shi te thungi wa was.
Yeah, so Geshe said that, like, even amongst the monks, right, if they have taken somebody as a teacher, they've decided to rely on them as a guru, but that teacher does something that they disagree with that, it is common for the monks to say, like, I really didn't agree with that. But, and so that is seeing a minor fault, but as long as it's not in a totally denigrating way, yeah, it's...
다 야수 지에텔 간조 치료스네 우승고요 라마 코로 답변을 저와 도지 쳔바 이나요.
Okay.
간조 치료 때리고 계세시게 도와서 변나 저와 도지 쳔바 이나요. 타마비 넘버 땜바 다가롱게 당간조. 그게 다 로르티아 할래야지 와레스 다.
Loso. Tumonwagi mi nampa tenya dapochi. Yes. So, but Geshe said, with especially revered figures, right, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, if one sees a fault, one way to think about this is to think they're manifesting this ordinary appearance, because if they manifested completely in all its brilliance, I wouldn't be able to identify with them. Right? He or she is manifesting in the ordinary appearance in a way to connect with me better so that they can lead me on the path to liberation, right? That's one way to transform that.
This way.
Yeah. So if the faults you're perceiving are relatively small, like if it's not something that's really going to compromise your faith, if it's just minor things, Geshe thinks it's okay to take the initiation, and then you just try your best to focus on qualities. So hopefully that answered the question. But observe carefully too, right, that the request from the Lama, that it's not something that is leading you in a negative direction. And that way it's important to maintain your independence, because you don't want to follow instructions that are going to lead you down a wrong path. Any other questions, Dave?
Sam, do you still have another question, or there's one here in the chat?
I just wanted to thank for the inspiring story about the flesh-eating zombie. What came up for me was an analogy of today's time with the zombie of consumerism and the zombie of the political dissension between countries. and the samaya of the child, the faith of the child, staying on the path and going back to the teacher is an analogy for me of staying faithful to the dharma, and then going back to the zombie, the same zombies that created the dissension and the distractions, then were transformed in the story. So just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Sam. Ko drung di shebu gasong sha saya gi mi di kariyan sena ko tanda ngarang so di sha saya di nganso duchak mantra sha dabu di nganso pesha dang longshu dabu sagi re dua deni di kare rab tuna so chogi res samso dabu chikyo res dene dela tene nganso ma jaya dang mi duksha chikyo res yine drung di nanglola ya roa puku chung di ko sha sagingi drumje di tune ko tempo chene de tu sons ane chirola gi netso kariyana shenong sabo kariyana ko kadiyene chugi chokla depa shuk champo chik de tu so de la tene ko par drone ko kelen chune ko su lebsares ane dene korongi depa shuk champo la tene dene sha saya mi dukshadi kopet gyorwa town tu so ko di shebuga son sa drondi
da tadi lo jingena momo yares kasara ko pena leka ducha chekena kondi tel pacha ngama pacha ya bojo para chela te tinga ba to tani tene la tani cha so na wo kondai tisela baya chi wo chong to ri momo yuduas
so Geshe is just explaining that, yes, that's an important meaning to derive from this. And actually, in the scriptures, there are many similar stories, that there are beings that seem irredeemable, right? So terrible that they are irredeemable. But somehow, there's an imprint somewhere deep within their mind, and somehow that irredeemable being meets with the right condition to be guided towards the Dharma. And so, yes, there are actually many such instances. Yeah. And so one of the most popular stories, of course, is the story of Angulimala, right, who had killed all those 100 beings and so forth, wore a necklace of their thumbs, but he was able to meet the Buddha Shakyamuni in this case, and reform himself and reach liberation. Yes. And also Milarepa, right? He was compelled into revenge and killed many people, but then through his teacher Marpa, he was able to be led to liberation. Ale, los. Yeah. Yes. So the teacher who actually taught Milarepa, one of the things that he used to kill and damage people, which was to bring hailstorms, right? Those of you familiar with this story will know, which was the power to bring hailstorms. He actually later developed regret, and he said, it's actually because of the instructions that I gave to you that you were able to rain down that death and destruction upon people. So you now definitely have to accumulate merit and dedicate some of it to me, because through my instructions you did all these terrible things. Yeah, so that it's a little bit related.
Thank you. So we have a question from Dom. Do sadhanas really matter? Did Buddha write any sadhanas? Are they cultural? Isn't refuge and bodhicitta the thing that really is worth spending time on? And before, we have one person saying your voice seems a bit distant compared to Rudy's and mine. Can you bring your microphone a little closer?
Are you talking to me, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's closer.
Yeah.
Is it louder or no?
Not much.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think maybe, I don't know that if it's like people have different systems, sometimes people are talking into their phone, into their iPad, so it will sound a little different sometimes, So do sadhanas matter? Why not just do refuge and bodhicitta? That's the question basically.
Yeah. Did the Buddha write any sadhana?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends which Buddha you talk about, right? It depends on what kind of Buddhist you are. Then ganso druptap din so ke champo ngene rebes ganso kamdro dang jangchugi sem mato goyaman dus tompa chom den degi druptap chik zomsa rebes di pögi richongi ne so marebes kare chene ke champo resa.
Mimi 가르치는 게 쳔버스는 간서 다테 게체 칼레칼레 용거 왔어. 가르치는 게 쳔버스는 게 단계라야 되레스. 나로 승인행에 소지 산도 그거나.
Yeah.
루도세 참모가 마시 로시르 마시 타메레스.
Geshe said that actually the answer is a little bit in what he said before. Why are the sadhanas important? Not in and of themselves, but because they are skillful means to be able to allow us to tap into the methods which will allow us to use the subtle wind and mind. And in our tradition, actually being able to use the subtle wind and mind is considered very important to reach Buddhahood or enlightenment. So that's why they're important. So to be clear, we all possess the subtle wind and mind within us, but we're not able to utilize it at all in our current state. So to be able to tap into the subtle wind and mind and to utilize those correctly, this is why sadhanas and other skillful means are important, because they will help us to develop the capacity to utilize those. Yes. So we have to be able to transform ordinary death, ordinary intermediate state, and ordinary rebirth into the three kayas of a Buddha. The essence of the highest yoga tantra, sadhana, is to transform those three ordinary death, intermediate state, and rebirth into those three bodies. So do we need to do that or not for enlightenment? In Vajrayāna, we would say yes. And it needs some clarification here of how Sutra and Tantra work. So in Sutra, what we are looking at is reducing the afflictions by cultivating the antidote that is their opposite. Yeah. So like we would cultivate patience as an antidote to anger. We would cultivate wisdom, realizing emptiness, as the antidote to the ignorance, grasping at the self, right? The thing that we're trying to diminish, it has an antidote that is its opposite that is cultivated. When we come to the higher levels of tantric practice, an antidote that is similar to the thing that we are trying to overcome, to the affliction that we are trying to overcome, is cultivated, right? So there's a difference in the psychology here, for lack of a better word. So Geshe said, he can't get too much into it in this context, but if you want his opinion is the sadhanas are quite necessary and useful, actually. Yeah. However, the person who asked the question, there is a way that Geshe could say that, yes, actually, they have a point, which is that if one decides to cultivate the Sutra Paramitayana, the Sutra path exclusively, and reaches a very high level of Bodhisattva ground, one can reach that very high level of Bodhisattva ground and then receive empowerment and become enlightened without the practice of the sadhana. So although it's very important, it's not essential in all cases. So in that way, the person who asked the question has a point. That's how the Buddha actually did it, the Buddha Shakyamuni. So he cultivated Sutra exclusively until he reached the final bhumi, the final ground, the 10th bhumi of a bodhisattva. But no matter how long he remained in single-pointed meditative equipoise upon emptiness, he wasn't reaching that final state of complete and perfect enlightenment, anuttara samyak sam bodhi. So in the Tantric scriptures, what it explains is that at that time, as the 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, the Buddhas of the 3 times manifested and kind of aroused him from his samadhi and said, there's one more thing you need to do. So he roused, he received abhisheka, or empowerment, to ripen his continuum, and then by that morning, he received that late at night, by that morning, he was enlightened. So in this case, yes, he didn't need to practice a sadhana. Because he was already so developed at the point that he received that ripening empowerment, it sort of happened very easily. He didn't need to kind of focus on developing the creation and completion stages, or the generation and completion stages, or a sadhana. It just kind of unfolded. All right. So if it's cool, shall we leave it here?
Seems like it, yeah.
Seems like it. Okay. All right. So we will leave it here. And then hopefully, if some of you are free, next Sunday we will see you for commencing the 5th Dalai Lama's, conjoined with the 14th Dalai Lama's commentary, Sacred Words of Manjushri. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.